I think so, anyway.
Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm Bryan Horning here with my guys, Randy, Bryan, and Reginald. Andre, what's up? How are you guys doing today?
Hey, nice and sunny here in South Florida. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, rub it in, man.
What do you got, Randy?
Well, it's got down to the mid 30s last night, which is pretty low for us. So, but he's rubbing it in because what is it, like 75 out there?
Yep, 74 and nice and cloudy.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I wish. We're like 17 this morning when I woke up. It was brutal. Too soon. That's
right. If you had 17 degrees, though, Andre, you wouldn't have iguanas running around everywhere. So
there you go. Yeah.
We don't have those here.
You'd have to bring out the snowplows for the iguanas.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Today we're looking at the financial impact of cybercrime in a way that most businesses never hear. Vendor breaches rippling through the banking sector, ransom payments exploding into the billions, and a decade of Treasury data that shows just how big and stable the cybercrime economy has become. So this is one of those weeks where the numbers are going to force you to stop and look a little harder at what's going on behind the scenes. Because today is not about isolated stories. They all connect in some way. They all paint a picture or form a pattern, in my opinion. You know, if you're running a business today, you need to understand what these numbers really mean. And maybe you've never been a victim of a ransomware attack or any kind of a data breach ever in your business, right? But I think, you know, in the next couple of years, that's going to change. So, Randy, we're going to kick it off with you today. I know your story hits right at the intersection of vendor risk and financial sector exposure. So let's jump right into it. You know, you shared this one this morning. I took a quick peek at it, and this one grabbed my attention. You know, a vendor that most people barely know by name ends up exposing data from more than 74 banks and credit unions.
Yep.
And once again, it's not the bank that gets hit directly. It's a third party holding all the sensitive data, and nobody in the public ever hears about these companies or this particular company. So,
yeah.
What are you seeing here?
Well, this one really jumped out to me as well, because we talk about this a lot on the show about third-party vendors, like you just mentioned, and how they affect or can affect your cybersecurity posture. And there's about, I think, 700-ish banks that were affected by this. So not every bank in the nation or anything like that. No, 74. I'm sorry. Not every bank in the nation by any stretch of the imagination, but still affected. And, you know, banks we typically see, not all cases, but a lot of cases, they've got higher security protocol in place. But this one was affected by their vendor, Marquis software. They provide software services for banks, such as data analytics, compliance reporting, CRM, which is customer relationship management. So a way to keep up with their customers, digital marketing services. They provide them to over 700 banks, credit unions, and mortgage lenders. So anyway, it looks like they had an unpatched sonic wall firewall, which that opens up a whole nother discussion there. And then the bad guys were able to get in. Looks like it happened around August. And then just in the last several days, they've had to file with various states to let people know what's going on. A couple of crazy things about the article. First off, the sonic wall part. SonicWall, I'm sure, is a great firewall. It's had a lot of issues over the last couple of years because of vulnerabilities getting attacked, and then also because of their VPN. It looks like, from the advice that's going out, that that's probably what it involved, was their VPN. So SonicWalls are a little more painful to update. Let's just put it that way. And it's not something you just push a button and everything's fine. Although they're better than they were 10 years ago, it's still kind of an issue. And I've said this multiple times on this show. When you have stuff that's difficult to update, when there's roadblocks to update, then you're going to become vulnerable when a vulnerability comes out and there's a patch out for it. But maybe it brings down all the systems or brings down all the people to do the patch, or maybe it requires a level 3 engineer to do the patch. Then those patches get delayed and the vulnerabilities happen. The other thing with this VPN issue, even though it was patched, the initial security keys didn't change after the patch. So if the bad guys got in before the patch, they still had access after the patch, unless the IT experts went in and reset those security keys. So bottom line, Marquis got breached, a bunch of their data went out, and now they're having to notify people. It appears, once again, I'm just going by reading between the lines. It appears they paid a ransom to keep the data from going out. They did put out a statement that none of the data is being seen on the dark web yet or being misused, but it might be kind of early for that, and we see that often in these statements. So pretty big thing to look at here and to be aware of, and to be aware of who your third parties are. Do they have strong security in place, or not? So that's about it for me, Bryan.
Thoughts, Andre, before I?
Yeah, I have a lot, man. I mean, at what point do banks, or like at what point do these type of industries require some type of third-party risk assessment, like a verified third-party risk assessment, where they're saying, if we are going to do some type of partnership and you're going to hold this sensitive information that our clients are trusting, we need to see the vendors that you're using, we need to see the supply chains, we need to see that you're doing things, we need like the stamp of approval. And of course that's expensive, but this is like really, really sensitive information, and we just can't play with it. Another thing that, this article was talking about, this is a hack, but this was a walk-in, as Randy mentioned. All of these things could have been prevented. We talked about the whole SonicWall in our show a few months ago, and now we're seeing, one of these examples. So this, like, again, it's just like, and this is a regulated industry as well. So we know that a lot of different agencies are now going to start, dropping the hammer. And unfortunately, it's not even the bank's fault. But I think these bigger banks have to come together and say, if we're going to be using your tool, you have to show us X, Y, Z, or this needs to be made public. So that way they can be sure that this data is being secured, and they're not being sloppy, because that's really what it was. It's just sloppiness.
It's a repeating theme. I mean, banks lock down what they control, but trust vendors who are outside of what they're controlling. Nobody checks the fundamentals. Nobody checks the frameworks. And this is a repeating theme that we're seeing in the financial sector, is that they offload a lot of this stuff to third parties, technologies, data storage, and these third-party vendors that are now doing things that were typically done in-house by these organizations are not being held to the same scrutiny or standard as the company itself. And here we go with that third-party risk again, right? So, the conversation is going to have to change with the regulators and the people who audit these financial companies to say, like, okay, your third-party risk is probably increasing based on how the market's going, cloud services, AI, all those things, right? You really have to scrutinize people's processes and ability to audit and scrutinize their own vendors' risk to their environment. And easier said than done, guys, in my opinion. I mean, that's the that's a situation that is just so ripe for box checking and hey, yeah, we're doing this. Trust us. Take our word for it. Oh, here's a certificate. Not knowing how they really obtain that certificate. I mean, because there's a lot of, I mean, believe it or not, folks, there's a lot of corruption out there when it comes to certifications and things like that. Meaning, like, hey, you hire us to do your consulting, and we'll give you that SOC 2 certification, right? And nobody really. I'm not saying this happens, but nobody really does the audit because they are also the ones who are doing the consulting work that's supposed to keep that company compliant. And I'm not saying they're not doing the right thing. I'm just saying you can't be checking your own work when it comes to this stuff. And there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I wanted to add a couple points real quick, Bryan. Well, a couple. So there's 700. This is what threw me off. 700 banks are customers of Marquis. 74 were in the notifications that went out to a few states. So most likely this has affected all 700. They're just not in states that have required notifications, or maybe they haven't come yet, or who knows what. I also wanted to say, like you just mentioned, the third-party thing in the banking industry. Well, I have a local community bank that I bank at, and I have a local credit union that I bank at, and they use the exact same software for their website, for their mobile app. So there's a third party there that's probably providing the mobile app and the software. Who knows to how many hundreds or thousands of banks, right? And then we had the same issue with government military contracts where third-party vendors, vulnerabilities, blah, blah, blah. So they have CMMC over there. Are we going to need something like that in the banking industry, like BMMC or something, right? Where they're requiring the third-party vendors in the banking industry to start having the same or similar standards as the banking industry has. You know anything? Is there anything like that going on or being talked about?
I have no idea. Andre?
Nope, I haven't heard anything.
Nope. I mean, I would say no, just because I haven't heard that.
Right.
But
anyways, good points that you made there.
Yeah. Also, one more thing I wanted to add was I Googled. This is a 40-year-old company. So they got established in the 80s. So compare that now to all of the new AI tools that's being put out there for companies, banks, whoever to use that are only about 2 or 3 years old. So imagine the security gaps and vulnerabilities that's probably going to be in those softwares. So it'll be interesting too.
It's going to be a crazy year in 2026 as all this stuff kind of comes together and becomes a major problem for everyone. It's like I said, like at the top of the show, like if you haven't got hit yet, you're more than your chances of getting hit are so high right now because of everything that we talk about on the show, which we could spend the next half hour talking about what those things are. But if you run a business, your chances of getting hit right now are so high, higher than they've ever been. So if you're not starting to think about the defenses and what you need to put in place to defend and then respond, you're gonna have a hard time getting through your event. Because as we say, the blast radius has to be reduced. We've always said that for years and years now, and the more you work on that, the easier it's going to be when that day comes. So. Andre, your story digs into the financial heartbeat of ransomware, of all things, right? So, where are you at here?
Can employees sue victimized companies?
What's that?
Can employees sue?
Right.
So this one I found interesting because we always talk about the user, the end user, the customer, and so forth like that. But many times we forget about the employees, because when a hacker comes into a system, not only are they're looking for anything, right? So they're looking for internal docs, they're looking for external docs, whatever the case is. So this writer, Naveen Good from Cybersecurity Insiders, he makes a good argument about why employees are suing their employers after data breaches. And if you think about it, it's true, right? So when you start working at a company, you have to give them your social security number, your house address, birth dates, bank direct deposit information, tax form, employment history. And when a hacker gets a hold of this data, there is a good reason to sue. And so the legal grounds that he's putting is that he's saying that employees can go and sue the employer because it's negligence. There's they argue that, hey, we gave you this information, and just because you had outdated software, lack of encryption, and all of these other topics we just finished talking about, you should have known this, and you should have done a better job. Also, there's data protection laws. There's invasion of privacy. So I really like this article because it just kind of just gave that other perspective of, in addition to the company looking at it in the sense of, oh my gosh, our clients are going to do some type of class action suit or come after us. You also need to worry about your employees, because they may, be on that same train and try to come after you. So it's just another reason why it's just cheaper to protect your data, protect your systems, and not have to deal with, a hit coming from all sides.
Yeah, I mean, look, well, this is only natural that this was going to go here, right? You have people who took a job at a company, right? I think the expectation is that the company is going to do everything to maintain operations so they can continue to earn a living and get a paycheck. And when a cyber attack disrupts that, certainly there's damages, right? If you lose your job over a cyber attack, and then that causes you to not be able to get another job for months and months, and you can't pay your mortgage, that's something that a good lawyer could work with to, make these companies have to pay these employees. And I just see it. And, as this moves along, at the end of the day, small businesses, employees of companies that get hit, small companies that get hit, usually they are kind of like the hidden victims, or the unspoken about victims of cyber attacks. Because, like, look, you lose your job because of a cyber attack, that sucks, right? And now this is just the system kind of fighting back against the organizations who made the management decision to not do the right thing. And when they don't do the right thing, they turn around and start suing their employers. So, it's just, I look at it almost like these business owners, playing roulette, or it's almost like a slot machine. It's like every day you come in and you're gambling, you're pulling that lever, and like, your employees might hit jackpot because you got cyber attacked.
Yeah, that's going to be some crazy bitterness. Imagine your employee, you getting like dings from your credit report that someone's trying to use your social somewhere, and you're working still for that employee. It's like, right? Oh my gosh.
Not even about not getting paid, not being able to pay your mortgage. What happens when your identity gets stolen too?
Yeah. Yep.
And when I first saw this article, Andre, I mean, the answer is yes, because an employee could sue over anything. Now, it might get thrown out of court, might not go very far, who knows? But at the same time here, if the employee can prove that, let's say the company sat down with my company, and my company did a cybersecurity risk assessment and said, hey, you need these controls in place, blah, 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 and it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And they're like, no way, we don't want to pay that much, or we can't afford it, or whatever, we don't want anything, or we'll take the basic of basic with a disclaimer saying we turned down everything else. Bottom line, if there's a breach and the employees get affected by that, then yeah, they can get sued because they decided to make a decision that impacted the employees negatively. Now, it may go to court and they don't prove anything, or they go to court and they prove something, and then the trial comes out in the employer's favor. But yeah, this is a whole nother avenue. And we've seen it. We've seen little, the beginnings of this, guys, over the last couple of years, where there's been I'm thinking about the sheriffs or whatever it was out in California, or the police department, I don't remember, but their stuff was breached. And like right after the union association was suing the police department or something like that. So we've seen kind of brewings of this. I think it's going to become more and more common.
It's going to become more and more common. It's one of these things, man, that I just look at like, it's like a long tail reputational damage to your business. And it's just something I think humans have a really hard time wrapping their heads around, like long term. Like, this is something that can play out over 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what happens. I mean, look, like your employees could sue you in year 2, right, for certain things. And then stuff could happen in year 3 and 4 that requires them to sue you again, or for, you to deal with allegations of something again. Like, we've seen companies have to deal with this for years and years and years, right? The other side of this is there is no protection in your insurance policies for any of this stuff. Like, this is like now kind of like another, like, it's like, you think about it like a video game. It's like now we've just leveled up, right? The legal side has leveled up, and now the cyber insurance policies and everything else are going to have to be rewritten and changed to keep up with how this stuff changes, which is, typically you're worried about with a cyber insurance policy, you're concerned with, paying the hackers, getting your stuff back up and running, and dealing with any kind of like downtime or operational disruptions, whether that be lost sales or something like that. None of it covers like employees coming after you for, damage that's happened to them, either through loss of pay or through, their information being stolen and abused against them.
Right.
So,
well, what we're seeing, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but I know that here in Texas, they just had a law go into effect. I think it was September 1 of this year, called it's a safe harbor law, basically. And what it means is, if your company is doing certain things, then your liability basically in these instances is minimized. And so if you have the cybersecurity controls in place, and they're actually pretty basic for this law, if you have them in place and then there's a breach, your liability is greatly limited. And so and it behooves companies to get cyber secure anyway. We're talking about employees, but Bryan, you mentioned the whole whole reputational damage. That is something that we can't even hardly comprehend, but it's huge. So,
no doubt. So, I'm going to try to throw this up on my camera here. I don't know if people are going to be able to see it, but that is an Instagram ad for the UPenn data breach. Right?
Yes.
So this was just a couple weeks ago, right? And this is a law firm, Lynch Carpenter, who is targeting ads to anybody who may have been impacted by the University of Pennsylvania email data breach that we talked about on the show a couple weeks ago. And this is why, like, you're going to see this trend where employees are going to become more aggressive. And it's really not the employees. It's these law firms who are targeting your employees. Guys, like, any company that's 200 employees or more, right? You're going to be able to target that page or those employees very easily on social media. Like, set up an ad in 2 seconds that says like, anybody who likes this company or is part of this group, whatever you can identify for that company, right? You're going to be able to target those people so easily. And like, within a few days of a data breach, you're going to start seeing ads in your social media feeds asking you to, join the lawsuit. Right.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is fill out the form. They get enough names on the list, they can go file that lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, they can go on LinkedIn and just go to the company name and just go to people, and you'll see all of their, and employees are going to talk, right? Because it's if they're trying to target like the clients, that's hard because they're scattered all over. But you tell one employee, and then some backdoor deal that the employee brings in more people and things like that. So.
That 1,000%. I mean, it's not going to get easy. I can tell you that. So for these businesses to deal with this stuff, it's not going to be fun. So we will keep you updated, guys. I just found this article we're going to talk about next just absolutely fascinating. I mean, if this doesn't say businesses are not doing enough, and this is like the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, or this is just like the last data point that you're ever going to get out of all this stuff. But this is the proof, right? This is the actual fallout for what happens when companies do not do cybersecurity properly, do not protect themselves, do not have the proper response in place. And it all goes down to this Treasury report. And I think the headline alone doesn't do it justice, because I'm going to tear this thing down to a level where I think some of this stuff is going to blow people's minds. $4.5 billion in ransom payments in the last 12 years, guys. About 10 years I looked at this data. So when people hear that, it sounds like a big number, but they don't understand the scale. So let me kind of put it in perspective for everybody. $4.5 billion is the kind of revenue you'd see from a mid-sized international corporation, right? If ransomware was a legitimate business, it would rank somewhere around the size of Crocs or Logitech. Think about that, right? A criminal industry with no legitimate office space, no sign on the building, no HR department, no supply chain problems, no taxes, is generating the same level of revenue as respected global brands. And that's just the ransomware payment, guys. This does not count downtime, recovery, insurance, legal fees, regulatory fines, lost contracts, lost opportunities, the long-term fallout. So when you stack all that on top of everything, the real economic impact is likely 10 times the reported payments that we're talking about here. So realistically, you're looking at $40 to $50 billion ecosystem over the last decade of just fueling a criminal enterprise. And businesses are willing to do it by the choices that they make every single day by not dealing with this stuff. Let me put that in perspective to everybody, right? That's the size of the entire cybersecurity software market in 2013. Criminals have literally matched the industry built to stop them. Another comparison I can give you guys is Treasury data shows that ransomware payments have grown faster than the GDP of several small countries. In some individual years, ransomware groups outpace economic growth of places like Iceland, Malta, and Belize. That should make people rethink what they can actually go up against. Any thoughts here on any of this stuff I'm throwing at you guys?
Yeah, the first thing is this is what was reported to the Treasury, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a key part.
Well, the interesting thing here with this is that they used various methods to figure this out. It wasn't just like, your tax returns, right? Or what was put in a report, a financial report, right? This is kind of like cross-referencing different money movements, making assumptions that certain conversions of fiat currency to Bitcoin were ransomware payments. That's kind of, they looked at a lot of different things to come up with this.
Mm-hmm.
So
also, Bryan, so this is since 2013, but and 2 billion in the last like 3 years, up until we have basically we have data to the end of 24, sometime in March or whatever, we'll get data through the end of 25. But for the 3 years ending at the end of 24, there was 2 billion. So we all knew that the curve is going like a hockey stick now. We're in. Hopefully you'll get that reference since you play hockey. But we're in. What's that bottom part of the stick called? We're in that part of the curve now, right? Maybe for 2013 to 2020, it was more level, but now we're in the hockey stick part. And the last 2 years have almost doubled, or 3 years, sorry. And then who knows what 2025 is going to end up bringing? Probably something along the same lines. It's crazy, man.
And I asked, so in the article, it lists the top 10 different ransomware variants companies or groups. And I asked ChatGPT, out of these top 10 groups, which ones were disrupted? And only 2 were severely disrupted where they're no longer, a Black Cat and Lockbit, where the other ones they're saying were not fully shut down and they're still active.
Or they scattered, right? And they operate as smaller or different groups.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So here's some more uncomfortable truths I want to give you on this stuff. A big chunk of this 4.5 billion happened because too many organizations skipped the basics. They had tools that were never deployed. They had backups that were never tested. And they talked about security, but they let the convenience dictate the decisions. And when attacks hit, they didn't have options. So they had to pay. I think if there's one message I think that this data that the Treasury Department put together sends is that ransomware groups thrive on indifference. These attackers, in my opinion, they don't need you to make huge mistakes. They just need you to leave the door cracked open long enough for them to walk through it. And when that happens, I think you're not negotiating with a criminal, you're negotiating with $1 billion global enterprise that has studied hundreds of companies just like yours. And we've talked about this, right? They know what to do. They know where to go to look for the information, and they know how to use it against you like clockwork, right? So, when I see this $4.5 billion number, I don't see just a regular statistic, right? I see a warning. Unless organizations start treating cybersecurity as part of their core operations and not an afterthought or not as something that happens to other companies and not us, the next report's not going to say 4.5 billion. It's going to say 10.
Yep. And you said organizations. This is not healthcare. This is not education. This is your multi-billion-dollar company and your one-person flower shop. They do not discriminate.
All right, guys, let's bring this home. Thoughts on today's show? Any last thoughts before we go? I can toss up some comments. We got some I don't understand. I guess we have an international audience now. Jason Smith, great discussion. He threw in a couple comments here. I'll throw them up on the screen. So many small businesses who think they're too small to get hacked. Doesn't apply to them. I couldn't disagree more. Cyber criminals love small businesses precisely because they assume they're not a target. This is real. It's growing, and ignoring it won't make it go away. And then he goes on about the breakdown for the Treasury payments. Cyber criminals operating more like mid-sized international businesses. Yeah, except they don't play by the rules. And they don't have to, right? So very little risk to run a cyber criminal organization in 2025 and 2026. So you can't afford to ignore this stuff anymore because these guys have such a leg up on what's going on out there. It's an unfair fight from the start, right? And unfortunately, if you start a business today, you better understand that that's the deal out there. Like, it's an unfair fight. When you plug in something to the internet, you could be in trouble. Appreciate the feedback. Don't know what you're saying here, buddy, but thank you.
His name is Bryan, and he lives in India, currently live in America, and he really enjoys tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Translates too?
To translate. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So
What I did have, there's some circles that are, commenting about the MSP world, and if, is our job going to go away, and how is our, technology going to be keeping up with other things. So, but I think these statistics shows that cybersecurity, at least for next year, is here to stay, and customers still need us.
yeah, we're not going anywhere. I mean, as much as people want to say AI is coming and they're going to take away tech jobs, and they will, and they'll help us, but they won't take them away. I can guarantee you that, at least not in the next 5 years. Anyway, from what I can see. Ooh, look at that. Sorry about that, guys.
That's not me calling you, man.
It is not. So you're actually in the room, so you wouldn't be calling.
Howard.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. So 3 stories, 1 message. Cybercrime economy is bigger, more stable, more organized than most people want to believe. Vendors with too much access and not enough oversight is becoming a real problem out there, especially as organizations move their various IT functions outside of their own organization. Ransomware groups are pulling in billions, according to the US government, and a decade of Treasury data confirming this is not random. And then your employees, they're tired of working for employers who don't do the right thing, and they're banding together and going after companies who just decide that cybersecurity is an afterthought, and they're not going to protect their information because, quite frankly, right? If one thing happens in all cyber events, employee data gets stolen. Like, if you have employees, your employee data is usually the first thing to go, right? And that's not, nobody goes to a job or nobody goes to work for somebody thinking that their personal and private information is going to get exposed, but it does all the time. So cybersecurity, from all aspects, from the cyber criminals to the class action lawsuits and the lawyers who are dealing with this stuff on the back end, it's all becoming structured. It's all becoming more mature, and it's only going to grow. So if businesses keep treating cybersecurity like a side project, I guess you got what's coming to you. So, all right, guys, if today's show gave you something to think about, do us a favor. Subscribe where you can, hit that like button, leave us a review if you're listening to this on a podcasting platform, and share this episode with someone or some company that needs to hear it. And if you want to support the show even more, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/securitysquawk. All this helps us reach more people and keep spreading the message. For Randy, Andre, and I, we will see you guys next week. Stay safe out there.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.